It's NFL Draft Week, of course, and the draft has been a source of pride for Buckeye fans because it's been a rather impressive draw for decades and decades and decades. We're looking at the third most of all time. We're looking at the number one selection when we talk about a first-round selections for the NFL Draft all time. So Ohio State sitting pretty once again, it appears, in terms of quantity for sure. How much quality, we will discuss that as well. Also, the transfer portal, Urban Meyer's prediction on the 2025 record, and more right here at the Voice of College Football. Appreciate you stopping by. Leave those comments and questions there in the chat. We appreciate your contributions. Steve's here every week. Tony's here every week. And we'll open up the phone lines if we can hit $100. Let's do that. But we appreciate your comments and questions as well. And again, consider contributing to this show because these guys deliver. Steve Hellwagon right next to me. Bucknuts 247 Sports. Tony Girdman down below. BuckeyeHuddle.com and Buckeye Weekly is the podcast. Hey guys, how we doing?
Doing great.
Doing well.
14 is the number, correct? Is that the all-time Ohio State figure? 14, I believe that's the number from 2004, and then equaled a few years ago.
That sounds right.
Would have been equaled in 2016 with Ezekiel Elliott and Joey Bosa and all those guys.
Yep, sounds right.
Can they
One
hit
shy
that
of the
number?
record.
What's the target number this weekend?
I think 15. Well,
15.
You want 16 because that would be the record for a 7-round draft.
But that would mean that
all by themselves.
Fryer or G. Scott Jr. got drafted, and it seems like a long shot that either one of those things are going to happen. But, stranger things can happen. Maybe Seattle in the 7th round, throws G a bone, or Fryer. It only takes one team to fall in love with Josh Fryer to take him. So, that would be what it would take to break the record. It seems they had 15 guys at the combine. So,
yeah, and even in the 7th round, you don't even have to fall in love. You just have to fall in like.
Yeah, it's not like you're counting on anybody in the 7th round to ever play a meaningful snap for you. So there you go.
Fall into like, or is it actually the lesser of, 24 evils at that point?
Yeah,
when you're selecting players.
Exactly.
Well, who's coming off the board first? Is that pretty obvious?
Looks like Josh Simmons, the offensive tackle. CBS, their projections have him going somewhere between 16 and 25, I think. So seems like maybe he's the first one off. But, to me, I don't know. I like Emeka Buka, but kind of depends on what people need, and probably easier to find a wide receiver than it is to find what you think might be a pretty good NFL caliber offensive tackle. I stopped to say whether he'd be the left tackle or the right tackle in the NFL, but he played left tackle at Ohio State for his last year and a half that he was able to play. So, a lot of people think it'll be Josh Simmons. Perhaps he's come back well from his injuries and tested out fine. And people believe he can come in and play right away, perhaps. Beyond that, maybe Jack Sawyer, late first round. I really don't know who else is getting a lot of first-round buzz out of this group.
And you wonder if Donovan Jackson can sneak in there, Tyleek Williams. I think right now the guy with the biggest buzz is Travion Henderson. I know he met with the Chiefs, who are looking maybe adding somebody in the late first. But he's a guy that continues to climb up the charts as people want to kind of do what Detroit did with Jahmyr Gibbs and compare him that way. And I think they grabbed him at like 10 or something, and Travion Henderson's not going to go that high, but you wonder if somebody might sneak in there and grab him late in the first, looking for that, just maybe that one last piece or the one complementary piece to your powerhouse running back. This is the guy that can maybe change the pace on you. I think with it's interesting. Like JT Tuimoloau was always going to be a first rounder until this year, and he's kind of drifted back. I think he's going to be fine, though. I don't know that, not in the first round, but I think he'll be a quality player. I think Emeka just seems like such a safe pick to me that I do expect him to go later in the first. And the thing you remember, like Jackson Smith and Jigba went kind of late in the first, and Michael Thomas was a second round guy, and like there's even Santonio Holmes was, I think, a late first round guy. So um, you can be really, really talented and still be a late first round guy. There's no, or a second round guy. There's no, oh, you should be so ashamed. I am surprised that there are some receivers that are like seen as clearly ahead of him, whether it's Luther Burden or Matthew Golden, which I don't necessarily get other than maybe his speed. And he's the guy that blows up because he's fast and then gets overdrafted and never really is able to do what you'd like a guy to do. I just think you know what you're going to get with the Mecca, and that's something that there's no, I don't think there's any risk there. He's just going to be a guy that can catch 50 to 80 to 90 balls a year for you, and however you choose to use him will also dictate how effective he's going to be in that role. It's similar to Jackson Smith and Jigba as a rookie. They just threw short stuff to him and he averaged like 9 or 10 yards a catch, and it's like you're not getting the most out of him. You could be getting so much more out of him if you just look at him as something other than just a little slot receiver. He can do so much more for you. And I think the same thing with Emeka.
Bingo. I'm thinking that in 10 years, Emeka Egbuka is still in the NFL. At no point is anyone talking about him being anywhere close to one of the best receivers in the NFL or anything like that. He's not being lauded for his spectacular catches or spectacular plays, but he's churning out 50 or 60 catches every year. I just kind of forecast and see that type of NFL career for him.
Like a Keenan Allen, just constantly producing yards and catches, and nobody ever thinks about him or whatever, but everybody would like to have a guy just like him.
Run a great route, catch the ball, flip the ball to the official, go line up, run a great route, catch the ball, flip the ball to the official, go line up, run a great route, catch the ball, flip the ball to the official. That's going to be his career. I think
never be an issue off the field or in the locker room.
Yep.
And it was also a really good kickoff returner early in his career before they took him off of that.
Yep. Obviously, this thing goes a lot deeper than just the guys who are going to potentially go Thursday night. They're talking about Friday, the second and third rounds. There could be 5, 6, 7 Ohio State players taken between the second and third rounds. Whoever those guys are that we mentioned that didn't go in the first round should go in the second. And then you're bringing into play some people like Cody Simon, Denzel Burke,
Jordan
Hancock.
I'm fascinated to see where Will Howard goes.
Will Howard to me is as you said, going to be really interesting. I think that the personal interviews that he would have done with any teams would have sold them probably on him. His Ohio State pro day, I think he completed his first 40 pass attempts against Air, which was pretty ridiculous. And then, you look at what he did. He raised his level of play. And in the championship game against Notre Dame, hit his first 12, 13, 14 passes, whatever it was. So he's a guy that rises to the occasion, it feels like. And I don't know if it was on this show or one of the other ones, but the story, I think I mentioned this, is he throws that pick 6 against Penn State and came back in the huddle and said, let's don't do that again. And went right on about his business. Those things are going to happen, particularly in the NFL. So, you don't never want something like that to happen. Obviously, you'd really rather not deal with something like that. But, he's got the right frame of mind to come back from something. If there's a setback or something happens, he's going to go out there and handle it.
Have we heard any comps on these guys that are intriguing?
I have not necessarily, other than like the Travion Henderson, Jahmyr Gibbs thing, where it's a guy that can do something with in space as a pass catcher, and seems to fit like the KC type of let's just go all offense all the time and really stress the defense. So that's one there. In terms of any other comps, I don't know, Steve, if you've heard any. I think you could see like Jack Sawyer. One question I have with him is he an outside linebacker in a 3-4? Is he a defensive end in a 4-3? And I think depending on what you see there, you can comp him to an outside linebacker, a particular one, or a particular defensive end who's maybe a little bit smaller but can still handle the run.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. I'm not sure who I would liken Howard to as a quarterback, other than to say, it's even unlikely he'd be somebody's backup this year. He'd probably be the third team guy, who runs the scout team and is on the taxi squad and gets elevated some week if one of the top two can't go. So, that to me, that's how most of these guys start out, unless you take them as a franchise quarterback. And I think it depends where they go too, and what the quarterback room looks like wherever they end up, what stage of their career is the starter, what stage of their career is the backup, and you go from there. But it's very competitive to make an NFL franchise as a quarterback. There are, 3 times 32, only about 96 of those people walking the planet. So it's very difficult to crack that fraternity. But I think he's got a really good opportunity to do that. And I think that wherever he ends up, they're getting somebody who's a quality person and a pretty good football player, and eventually could be a starting quarterback in the NFL. I don't see him walking in and starting anywhere day one. It's just too much to expect out of somebody.
Well, and what quarterbacks in this draft are going to do that? Is that just Cam Ward? Does somebody think Jackson Dart can do that as they trade back into the first round later on? I think with Will Howard, you've got somebody, like, whether he can start or not. Like I said this, I don't even know where I said this yesterday, but Craig Krenzel started 5 games as a freshman or as a rookie with the Bears because their quarterback situation was bad and there were injuries. And I think it was 3-2 in those 5 games. They were 5 of the ugliest games you ever saw, not just from a quarterback perspective, but that's how the Bears. You guys know. But
the Bears,
somebody may be drafting Will Howard in the 2nd or 3rd round, planning to use him in 2026 or 2027, but you never know. Ask Brock Purdy how plans go for you, and what nobody was expecting him to need to start being the last pick in the 7th round. But if you're going to use a pick in the 2nd or 3rd, like, that's one of the decisions you've got to make, is like, we're using this, but we're not planning to use it. We're using the pick, but we're not planning to use the player. And so, would we be better off using this on somebody we're going to play, or would we be better off on using this on Will Howard and then playing him? Like, these are all decisions that have to be weighed. And I think he's going to pick up any offense you put him in just fine. But it's still like, no rookie quarterback is ever, you shouldn't expect them to excel, especially if they're not an elite, freak of nature that the rare guys, and even the rare guys, will struggle at points. Look at CJ Stroud. Was fantastic as a freshman, struggled a little bit as a second-year guy. Eventually, the league catches up with you, and then you have to adjust. And rookies, the league has already caught up with you. You're trying to catch up with the league.
That sounds like a comp to me, Brock Purdy. Size is pretty comparable, right? They're both mobile guys, but they're not Michael Vick. They do not have spectacular throwing arms, but certainly Brock Purdy has shown that he can throw all the throws that are necessary in the league.
Teammates love him, leaders, that whole thing. They've got the intangibles and the tangibles. There you go. Rookie of the year.
I like it.
I don't understand why he's not more highly sought after or not higher in the rankings than he is, because he did everything Ohio State needed him to do. And sometimes he made, there are 2 plays a game that were like, what are you doing? But if I watch Miami, there are 5 times a game where I'm like, Cam Howard, what are you doing? But all of the other stuff that he does negates those things. Like, what are you doing running all the way to the left side of the field and throwing all the way to the right side of the field? What are you doing? But it's like, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And NFL coaches are always like, I can change him. I can fashion like a like a desperate housewife. I can make him into what I need. I can fashion him into the man that I want him to be. And as we know, first round quarterbacks are as hit and miss as teams bat about 500. NFL franchises bat about 500 with those guys, if that.
Considering the best defense Cam Ward faced last year was Florida.
Probably.
Florida. Didn't play Clemson, didn't play SMU in their own conference. Florida.
Yeah.
I guess it's Florida. That him making a zillion pirouettes in the pocket all the time.
Yeah.
I would have loved to have seen that. I wanted to see that against a Texas defense, an Ohio State defense, even Notre Dame, even Penn State. Wanted to see Cam Ward against a good defense last year.
Well, I mean, you got to see him for a half against Iowa State in the bowl game. You got to see him lose a tough game at Syracuse. But I think there's a ton of ability there, and it's fun to watch. But I also think the times that aren't fun, good luck. I don't think he's Jaden Daniels. I think Jaden Daniels is incredible. But I don't like any of these guys number one overall. I'll just say that. But I don't know that I like anybody in this draft number one overall.
Yeah, Jaden Daniels threw 1 million passes his final season at LSU and threw like 4 picks.
Yeah.
He had the entire offense on his back and still only threw 4 picks. There doesn't appear to be any kind of lean in terms of national championship quarterbacks. It seems to be kind of a roller coaster all over the chart. It's not like the old Heisman stigma or anything like that. You've got your Mac Joneses, but you got your Joe Burrows and your Jameis Winstons, Jalen Hurts from the last, Trevor Lawrence from the last 10 years. Maybe, if anything, they're on the positive side. Deshaun Watson, who, of course, despite some of his recent woes and miscalculations, obviously had a great start to his career.
Yeah, it was so great. One team gave him $300 million.
Yeah, he didn't even want to be there.
Way to bring the show down, Mark.
Yeah, I can't run the Cleveland Browns from here. It would be much easier to do better than what they're doing. But
the best reason to go from Saturday straight to Monday, the Cleveland Browns. Yeah, just take the Sundays out of my life. I don't give a crap. That's fine. Yeah, I'll just go straight from Saturday night to Monday morning. That's fine.
You can't have it all, Steve.
Where would you put it? If you had it all, where would you put it?
Storage, bigger house.
Yeah.
I do think I think there are some franchises that value the championship stuff more than others. I think they all should value it some. But I mean, look at the Eagles. They value Georgia, and some of these other programs they value the big time college programs. Urban Meyer did it at Jacksonville. It didn't work out for him, but it's interesting to see like what franchises value more than some others. Like when the Bengals would back in the day would value like potential over being a good citizen. It's like, well, if there's a possibility this could turn out very, very good for us because he's a good player when he's not in jail. And let's see if we can just keep him out of jail, then we're heading to the Super Bowl.
I don't know. When the red flags are there, Steve, you can't ignore them.
Nope.
That's what you have to do.
I agree. I think this will be an interesting case study, this draft. I think just to understand what teams are looking for and what's important in this draft process, like what really is the driving factor? Is it productivity? Is it potential? What is it? I mean, it size, speed, what can it be?
All right, folks. Do appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. Catch us on your favorite audio platform as well. That's Amazon, that's Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio. If you can't watch us again, catch us on your favorite audio platform. And we're here every Wednesday, typically 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Please subscribe to the channel. Please follow Steve at Bucknuts and, of course, Tony at Buckeye Huddle and Buckeye Weekly, which leads us, Tony, to anything that you guys have in store in regards to transfer portal, NFL draft coverage, all that business.
Well, and I just dropped a quick solo show, Buckeye Weekly episode on the transfer of TC Caffey, walk-on running back. He's jumping into the portal, and so talk about that, and also the recent transfer of long snapper Morrow Evans, who is a redshirt freshman who's probably the guy. No, Steve. Here's the thing. That's a more impactful transfer than TC Caffey, because John Furlman, their long snapper this year, this is his last year. So what are they going to do next year? They've got to go find a long snapper. So when we're not talking about long snappers, that's a good thing. When we are talking about them, that's a bad thing, whether it's for clicks or if you don't have a long snapper, you're in trouble. And so Ohio State's got to get that figured out. And then also the Buckeye Huddle, I'm just continuing to work through the spring recap, positional recaps. And then yesterday I did write a story that I was asking some slot receivers about, the Buckeye slot receivers, if it takes more courage to play in the slot than outside. And the answer is yes, according to the slot receivers, because you're running routes amidst linebackers and safeties rather than just running against a corner near the sideline. So you can find that at buckeyehuddle.com.
The long snapping skill set, I should probably give more credit to than I do. But I'm thinking back to seasons and seasons and seasons of watching college football and game after game after game after game. And it seems like everybody finds a long snapper that can get the ball to the holder right on the money, right on his nose, 90% of the time, if not more, and back to the quarterback, the punter, and the whole deal. So it doesn't seem to be that rare of a skill set.
I will tell you, though, when you get the wrong guy, when you get a snapper that doesn't necessarily see the call for a fake punt against Michigan and they mess up and it possibly cost you a game, you have the wrong long snapper in there and things can go poorly. So as long as, like I said, if you never talk about them, then things are going just fine. And most teams do seem to find one. I do remember watching Zach Bourne at the end of the Ohio State Pro Day trying to increase his draft stock by becoming a long snapper, kind of like not on the spot, but in a matter of a couple weeks. And it takes more than that. They're a strange crew. They're a unique bunch of people. The long snappers, they're a tight knit circle, and you got to have one that you can trust, and you got to have another one that can step in case something happens to that guy. And so the Ohio State will get it figured out for sure.
John Dorenbos. I heard him give a talk just a few weeks ago, not in person, but I saw it online. He was like a 14-year NFL veteran, first long snapper to get an extended contract in the NFL, many-time Pro Bowler, first long snapper to be traded, ended up at the New Orleans Saints. Also, by the way, not to bring down the show, one of the reasons why he goes around speaking after a 14-year NFL career is that his father murdered his mother when he was like 12 years old. And obviously that met him with a lot of challenges to overcome throughout the rest of his life.
That's an awful story.
I tell people, like, long snapping, it can be like middle relief where you can do it until you can't do it anymore. If your team can count on you and you don't ever get too expensive and you kind of understand your place, you can stay at a place for 10, 12, 14 years, which is extremely rare in the NFL.
Yeah, they had a guy, Kevin Hauser, I think, from Ohio State, who lasted double-digit years with New Orleans more recently, probably. And they've had a couple other guys go and latch on as well. But, we talk about how rare it is to be a quarterback. There's only 32 NFL long snappers. I mean, it's not just like there's only 32 kickers and 32 punters. It's a hard fraternity to crack into.
Yeah, and Liam McCullough's out there. He's still doing it. And there's others. Jake McQuaid, I believe he is still out there. He was a Pro Bowler. He did it for a long time. Of course, undrafted. He's right now he's with the Dolphins. So he's been with 6 teams, and he was with the Rams for 10 years. So
wow,
like it'll get you a pension.
Not
there
bad.
You go.
Ed Rogers, hit the like button so everyone else do the same. Appreciate that, Ed. Please hit the like button. Please consider contributing here at the Voice of College Football on this Buckeye show. Tony's here every week. Steve's here every week. We appreciate your contributions. And I guess this is a segue to Yakov's super chat. Steve, rank, pain order, drive, fumble, red right 88, Deshaun Watson.
Yeah. I think the drive was the worst. It just became this legendary thing for John Elway. The fumble came the year after the drive, and it was on a Sunday afternoon, evening. And I always went home to Circleville most weekends when I was at Ohio State. And so it's halftime, and I'm watching the game, and I'm like, this isn't going to end well. You just knew it wasn't going to end well. So I get in the car. I'm driving from Circleville up 23, and I got the Scioto Downs, and that's where the fumble happened. I was listening to the Browns broadcast. I know exactly where I was when the fumble happened. I was listening to it in the car. And, it's just our plight as Browns fans. Red right 88, I think, is the Sipe interception against the Raiders. Is that what they're talking about? I would have been like 12 or 13 years old when that happened. And, when you're that young, you kind of still have this idea, oh, it'll happen someday. It'll still work out. We've got all these great players. We've got Ozzie Newsome and Dave Logan and the Pruitts, and we got Sipe, and, we're going to have a great team, for a long time. And, here I am. What was that, 80? So that's 45 years later. I'm still sitting here wondering when it's going to actually happen. But I didn't think that was terrible at that time. It was terrible. I mean, because they were ready to win the game and, and go on. But, I think drive is the worst. Fumble and red right are right there with it, behind in any order you want. Deshaun, that's just a different level. That's just you take something that nobody, even on the day you got him, was all that happy or excited about. Mm-hmm. And it's gone 10 times worse than anybody could have ever hoped or envisioned. So, yeah, I don't know.
Let me ask you this, Steve. Who did more damage to making the Browns disappear? Art Modell or Deshaun Watson? Like, because they've gone, for fans that really did not like Deshaun Watson, it's hard to root for your team. Now, when they're gone, there's nothing to root for. So, like, you don't even have that emotional pull. But they've both done damage for years.
Yeah, and now you've got this whole thing about moving the team to Brook Park, I think is what it is, the suburb near the airport, and they want to put up a development and spend all this money for Now, granted, they'll have a few concerts. They'll have 10 Browns games a year, and maybe an occasional Final Four, NCAA regional. I don't know. I don't know what else. Maybe a college football championship game. Most times, if you build a new NFL stadium, you get a Super Bowl out of it. But it's kind of off the beaten path where they want to put it. And yet, the city has had 100 years to develop something around the stadium on the lake, and they never did. And so I can understand the ownership's frustration with the lake situation that, it's never going to flourish there. So, but I don't know. It's hard being a Browns fan. I mean, we survived 0-16 with Romeo, and I mean, it's hard. It's damn hard.
I have a buddy who's pretty enraged about this whole stadium situation because he figures, okay, the Browns suck. They've always sucked, at least in recent history. They built a new stadium in 1999. Why is that not good enough?
25 years.
They never hosted a playoff game there. Now they're tearing this down, and they are giving the tax burden to everyone in the state, and he personally hates the Browns.
Tax burden is an interesting thing. The state is, selling the bonds, and then the Browns, I think, have to pay back the bond money. I don't think it's going to be a situation where Joe and Jim, taxpayer, are going to have to pay a whole bunch of money to build a Browns stadium. I think it's helping them finance it, I think, is what it's all about. But what I know about bond issues and all that stuff, you can put in a thimble. But I think they're just being the conduit to help get it financed, I think.
If you're a billionaire, you could pay for it yourself.
Should be able to. Yeah. I mean, you've been ripping people off at them truck stops for 15, 20, 30 years. So
beef jerky should not cost $20. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. Whatever that was, however, they were under federal investigation for fraud at the truck stop. So.
Yakov, I guess my take on that, even though that wasn't addressed to me, is I do think that the silver lining in those three incidents would be that those plays saved that team from getting embarrassed in the Super Bowl.
Yeah. So who would they have gotten beaten by?
Raiders, Giants.
Was that the 48-9 Raiders game? Like, did they play Washington and lose a game
1980. They lost to the Raiders. Well, yeah, they would have played the Eagles. They would have played the Eagles in the Super Bowl. The Raiders, obviously, were the team that advanced. They still would have had to go play an AFC championship game, which I believe would have been at home.
Yeah.
Against San Diego.
Yeah.
The other two were, championship games that would have lined them up against Phil Simms, Lawrence Taylor, that crew.
Yeah.
Giants, and then the Doug Williams team that beat the Broncos into submission. We'll never know. That's just my estimation. All right, folks, back to the Buckeyes. We're here on our 314th edition, and we appreciate your support in any way you can deliver that. All right. Every list I've looked at concerning transfer portal possibilities for Ohio State center on the offensive line, but mostly the defensive line. And if you're unfamiliar with these guys, which I got to say I mostly am, because you got a Sam Houston offensive tackle, you've got a number of guys that are under the radar, but there's one guy in particular who played in the ACC, Bo Atkinson, who put up some numbers that if you're into stats and go there first, are pretty impressive to hopefully solve the need of making up for what they lost, Tony.
Yeah, I think like 11 tackles for loss and 7.5 sacks last year. And those 7.5 sacks are, I believe, equal to what Caden Curry and Kenyatta Jackson have amassed in their entire careers combined. So it gives you an idea of the lack of production that Ohio State has coming back, losing Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau and Mitchell Melton at defensive end. And things are looking pretty good so far right now. He visited this week, and that visit went well. And so he's the one guy I think you can be optimistic about right now on the defensive line, not just Ohio State's chances of landing him, but the chances that he contributes. And I think it's a pretty interesting addition if it happens, because now you've got 5 guys, and with Kenyatta Jackson, Caden Curry, they added Logan George from Idaho State. You've got CJ Hicks, who's making that transition, and then Bo Atkinson. All 4 of them are fourth-year guys. And I think CJ Hicks and Caden Curry are the only true seniors. Everybody else has an extra year. But you've got all of these veterans and really only one guy that's produced at this level. I think expectations are very high for Kenyatta Jackson, and people assume he'll be doing well. But this is an opportunity to add somebody who's actually done it and been a starter and been productive at this level, at the Power 4 level, let alone the FBS level. So I think I think that the need is greater at defensive tackle, but the bodies aren't there and the opportunities aren't there. So if you can get somebody like Bo Atkinson, go do it and figure out the rest after that.
I had a list here. Let me just call it up. Bill Kurlick from our staff looked at a few guys, and he definitely had Bo Atkinson at the top of his list. There have been some crystal ball predictions for Ohio State to land him. I'll turn my ringer off just in sympathy to whoever's ringer that was. Georgia Southern defensive lineman Troy Pikes scheduled to visit Ohio State this weekend. Also looking at Ole Miss, Georgia Tech, and South Carolina. He has 3 seasons of eligibility remaining, so I like that. Defensive lineman Murad Watson, going to be a hot commodity in the portal, and his price tag will be high.
Well, and he committed to Texas yesterday, so he's off.
He scratched Murad Watson.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned Sam Houston State, a guy named Orion Irving, 6'6", 310 pounds. Played in 10 games, started 5 at Sam Houston State, which I did not know this is in Conference USA now. So there you go. He's going to visit Ohio State this weekend as well. Houston, Tulsa, Liberty, and Middle Tennessee State also involved. Here's a wide receiver, Keelan Marion from BYU. Caught 20 passes in 2023 and 24 passes this past year. And Ohio State's not offered, but they've got a lot of top schools that are looking at him. And here's one from Bloom Carroll, which is about 10 miles from where I'm sitting right now in Fairfield County, down between Columbus and Lancaster. Jaden Ball, and he's at Purdue, and he is supposed to be making an official visit this coming weekend to Ohio State. I would think that he's going to end up at Ohio State if everything checks out on the visit. So I think that their thought is they may still be a man down on the offensive line to fill out a full 3 deep all the way across the board. And Jaden Ball could be a potential. I guess he was a 2024 graduate of Bloom Carroll, so he was in competition this spring to be Purdue's starting right tackle. So I guess that's enough to get you an Ohio State offer. So there you go. Ohio State obviously passed on him a year ago at Bloom Carroll, and now I can't say that Bloom Carroll plays the best competition in Ohio in their league, but I guess he's a guy that can come from those meager beginnings and be a Big Ten caliber player. So we'll see how that checks out. But those are some other ones that at least Bill Kurlick from our site had tracked out on. And every day more guys enter and more names come up for Ohio State.
Yeah, and it'll finally close on Friday. People don't have to land anywhere by Friday, but they've got to be out. They've got to be into the portal by then. The Pikes thing is interesting. Like, he's Georgia Southern, played a little bit, and you wonder like what they're looking for, because what they've got is basically, I don't know that there's any difference between what they've got and what their options are in the portal right now at defensive tackle, basically. And I said this, we did a show, Mark Givler and I from Buckeye Huddle did a show yesterday talking about the portal, and one of the problems, you got to be careful bringing somebody in at defensive tackle, because it could chase 2 guys out, and bringing one guy in who's basically the same as one guy that's currently here, that's whatever. But if you bring in somebody and then you lose 2 or 3 guys because of it, like, that's a net negative for sure. And so you got to be careful, because if you're not bringing in a difference maker and it still causes a problem, now you've harmed yourself. In terms of the offensive line, I asked Ryan Day after the spring game, I'm like, so how do you, what's the process of, your conversations about the portal from before spring begins to after the game? And then that's where he mentioned we're 2 down on the offensive line. That's one of the things they've been talking about. And it's like, I'm trying to get him to talk about defensive line. And he's like, we're 2 down on the offensive line. We've got to go figure that out, because they lost George Fitzpatrick and maybe Zen Mahalski after towards the end of the season, and they couldn't replace them. So those are 2 guys they were looking to replace. And again, they're not looking for starters. They're looking for somebody to fill out their depth chart and their numbers and keep them where they are, especially after last year when everything that could happen did happen to that offensive line. I don't think you can expect things to be that clean ever again, or that you can't. They're never going to expect things to be clean, even though we've seen seasons where Ohio State has won a national championship with the same offensive line, like in every game. I think they did that in 2014. They may have done it 2 or 3 years in a row. That's not what happened last year, and I don't think Ryan Day ever expects it to happen for them.
As soon as you mentioned, Tony, one guy coming in from the transfer portal, chasing out 2 others, and the possibility of that happening, you wonder what the conversations are. On one hand, you don't want a coaching staff that feels paranoid about every move that they make, that they've got to go have conversations with the current team to make sure everybody's psyche's okay. But at the same time, it's one thing if somebody does get buried on the depth chart and there's legitimate concern and maybe that's not the right fit for them and they need to go elsewhere, versus having a sit down with a couple defensive linemen to say, okay, even with an addition of someone theoretically, or, so-and-so just came in the door, this is how, this is looking right now in regards to reps across the board, because we still need layers of players up front.
Right. You've got to build out the depth chart. And with the number increasing to 105, Ohio State will have more than 85 scholarships. They're probably not going to use all 105, but the roster is going to get a little bit bigger. But I will tell you, when they were thinking about Quinshon Judkins, they went to Travion Henderson and said, what do you think? He's like, I'm all for it. When they were thinking about adding Max Clare, they went to the tight ends, and Keenan Bailey went to the tight ends and said, what do you think? And they're all for it. So you're getting that input. And I do wonder how often it is, has there ever been input that has chased somebody away, that has kept Ohio State from going after them? Or is it just something where they knew he wouldn't be the kind of fit anyway? Even if somebody says like, well, we wouldn't want them, like how much does that weigh in? Because the other thing is, if you're part of the team, you're like, well, I don't want that guy. That also says, well, I'm kind of afraid of competition, which is also something that you don't want to convey to your coaches. But it is interesting that they do ask for feedback at times. I don't know that they do it all times, but with something like this, one of the things Ryan Day always says is you have to be transparent with your players throughout the entire process, whether you're looking around, what you're doing. That way they are never blindsided in terms of their playing time, their views on where they stand. And right now, this past week after spring game, everybody's been getting their annual review basically on how their winter and their spring went. So right now, there's so much honesty being given to some of these players right now in terms of where you stand, what playing time looks like, what the next steps are, that and at that point, like, all of the writing is on the wall. That's why you see a lot of guys will transfer out after the spring because they know that they're not going to play. I think it's interesting that Ohio State has not lost too many guys to this point. But I also think that shows that they're not chasing anybody out at this point because they've got enough roster spots for everybody. There's no like you need to go or pushing anybody into the portal because they have room for all of these guys. And right now there's a bunch of positions where they don't want to lose anymore, especially on a defensive line.
Tony, the 2 examples you gave there of conversations that were had seem very different to me. Travion Henderson's one of the best, or was one of the best running backs in the nation, and selling to him, okay, we don't need you to be a 1,700-yard back. We need you to be a 900-yard back. You're going to have help. You split time. It all is good because we're looking at 16 or 17 games. That seems like an easy sell from a wear and tear standpoint and all of it, versus we're bringing in one of the best tight ends in the conference. He caught 55 passes last year. This position doesn't even catch passes as it is. Like, can we really sell this?
Well, it is interesting in the way that the tight end room in a whole is strange because they're very close knit and they all root for each other and they welcomed him in. And so it is interesting because I think, Steven, you may have been there when Keenan Bailey was talking in the spring about, guys could have left after the season. We've got a bunch of guys, 5 guys played in the national championship game. We've talked about that before. 6 guys played in the playoffs, including true freshman Max LeBlanc. So he got time, I think, maybe against Tennessee. But it's a very interesting room in that And I'm just writing about it now with the season recap or the spring recap of the tight ends. I think they've got 4 guys that could start in Max Clare and Jelani Thurman, Bennett Christian, and Will Kazmarek. And I think you'll see plenty of games where Will Kazmarek and Max Clare are starting together. But it's just for one, you've got to sell Max Clare on wanting to, or there's not going to be 51 catches here for you, and there's not going to be 75 targets for you. But also, one of the selling points was we've got Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate and Brandon Innes and Bryson Rogers and these running backs that will free you up. So it'll make life easier for you. You may not be as busy, but it will make life easier for you. And I don't know, Steve, when you talk to these guys, like these tight ends are just, I think they're a complete unit. They function basically as one, and it's pretty interesting to watch.
Yeah, I think they're pretty invested in Keenan Bailey. He's such a personable guy as the tight ends position coach, and he's built that culture that it, and you look at the history. If you play at Ohio State at tight end, you're generally going to go on to an NFL career. And so I think that's what a lot of these guys are chasing at this point. I think for Max Clare, going from a team that was 1-11 to a team that was 14-2, I think there's a lot of allure to that. So I think that makes perfect sense for him. You don't even have to throw him one pass. He just won't be on the losing end of 11 football games this coming year. He's got to be happy. So, you look at things differently, and, it's kind of refreshing sometimes to see that in this era and time that everybody's looking out for number one, and I need to get paid the most and I need to play the most. There's only so many guys that are going to fit both categories. And it's just the way of the world right now that, they lost a power forward in basketball, Sean Stewart, who started just about every game this past year at the center position. He was outmatched. He was trying to 6'9", trying to guard 7-footers, trying to score against 7-footers, and it didn't go very well. Well, they've brought in a 7-footer and they brought in a 6'8" guy. And now he sees, I'm not going to start potentially this coming year, and he leaves to jump into the transfer portal. That's the opposite of what you're describing at the tight end position for the football team. But the basketball team upgraded. They got better players. A 7-footer and the 6'8" guy, both productive at their previous stops, are going to come in and command minutes. And, Sean's minutes could get cut. His starts could get cut, et cetera. So he decided to take his ball and move on. So, I told a buddy of mine, how they're handling all this with the money and the slotting and where the money is coming from. That's just mind-numbing that there's this endless supply of money out there that is paying these players. And somebody said Kentucky basketball is now up close to $20 million trying to buy a championship. And, we said Ohio State and several other teams were around 20 million in football this past year, could be 30 million this year. Well, if Ohio State only gives them 15 from the NCAA rev share, that means they had to raise $15 million somewhere outside the athletic department with the collectives or wherever to pay what's been promised to all these great players. And where is this unending pool of money, and how can we all dive into it is kind of my thought. Maybe we missed the boat. Should have worked on our blocking and tackling a little bit better back in the day.
Well, you can also come up with some sort of a collective or some sort of a business plan around the players making money so that you can also leech off of the players. Not that the collectives are doing that, but you see all of these different industries that come in, and we're just trying to find a way to get in there, whether it's agencies or whatnot, because there's certainly a lot of money there. And why not? What's 5% of a lot? Not bad.
Yep. Crazy.
Well, Steve, you had skills on the hard court. So you had that route. You just needed to change your birth certificate by about 35 years.
Not really. Not so much. I enjoyed it. We had a lot of fun. I'll say that. But yeah, no, we weren't winning anything important. That's for sure.
Folks, we do appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. Appreciate all the contributions in any way possible. Urban Meyer said this team's going to go 10-2. Now, that was brought to my attention by, I believe, a Michigan fan who said that he predicted a loss to Michigan. I went back and looked at it. I did not hear, nor did I listen to everything that came out of his mouth. I glanced at an article. It didn't appear as though he was specifying the losses here. So that might have been a bit misconstrued as expected. However, I don't see Urban Meyer's the kind of guy that wants to make predictions in April about the football season, but being in the podcasting world now, he's probably been encouraged to say, people are going to want to hear what your prediction is on this team.
Well, if you predict them to go 10-2, that's what they did last year. So that's a safe prediction. It's like, well, there's nothing wrong with it. You can go 10-2, win a national title. I mean, why get after me? But when you look at the schedule, at Illinois is going to be interesting. Obviously, the start with the Texas, you get that one at home. At Wisconsin is, as we know, always interesting, and of course at Michigan. I think there's certainly potential there for 2 losses in those.
Long
12.
trip to Washington. I mean, granted, it's not the same Washington that played for the national championship 2 years ago. They really took a big step back last season, but I think that coach Jed is a pretty good football coach, and eventually will have a team. I think Ohio University is interesting in there. Not that that's a potential stumble at all, but Ohio University is going to play Ohio State in Columbus, and they are hosting West Virginia in Athens this year. And I've got friends who are West Virginia fans, and I've been to a couple games down there at West Virginia and Morgantown, and it really is a great party. You want to talk about the ultimate party fan base coming to the ultimate party city with Athens, Ohio, with all the bars and everything that's going to happen down there. That should be electric on whatever that says. Saturday, well, that's the OSU game. I think it's the week before they play West Virginia or the week after, but that is going to be if OSU is playing Grambling or they're off that following week, that might be a fun one to go down to Athens and enjoy. And OU has knocked off some teams. Iowa State, they played there a few years ago and beat them. So, it's not like West Virginia has been it's the week before on Saturday, September the 6th. Yeah. So, my goodness, they're opening the season at Rutgers. So they're getting 3 pretty good paydays there, although West Virginia, the Peden Stadium probably only seats 25,000, 30,000 people, and you can only jack up the ticket prices so far, but that'll be a tough ticket for West Virginia fans to try and get in there to see their team play. There'll probably be many more of them in the campers and in the tailgate lots than actually get to go inside the stadium down there. But that's a fun one. If you're looking for somewhere to go the week before, go down to Athens and check out that scene beginning Thursday night. That's going to be off the hook. So, well,
and Steve, the greater thing about it is because they play Rutgers on the Thursday before, they've got 2 extra days of drinking to prepare. So this is no big noon kickoff for them. They've got not basically 8 or 9 days to get liquored up for this one.
If you believe the message boards, it sounds like Ross Bjork is doing everything in his power to try and convince Fox to either put the Texas game at night or just not select it and let NBC take it, perhaps for a night game, which there'd have to be some real horse trading involved to permit somebody else to have that game because obviously it's a rematch from the semifinals this past year and 2 of the biggest brand names in the sport. So we'll see if Ross is successful in his lobbying effort, if there even is one. At Washington, we talked about Minnesota at home. Don't sleep on the Gophers. They beat Ohio State and Columbus, once every 30, 40 years. At Illinois, interesting. At Wisconsin, a week later is interesting. That's like going from I'd say the frying pan to the fire, but I don't think that Illinois is necessarily the frying pan. Penn State at home. Obviously, Penn State is still searching for that win over Ohio State. Those next three shouldn't matter too much. Just throw the helmets out on the field. And, that last one is the big one. Ryan Day's, at some point wants to get that monkey off of his back, and no better time to do it than this year, when it means potentially you'd be locking up a spot in the Big Ten championship game potentially, for whatever that's worth, and certainly helping your playoff seed if you can win that game. So it's going to be a fun year, I think. Is there anybody from the Big Ten that we think is going to be really good that they're missing? USC, Nebraska, I don't know.
Oregon. I mean,
Oregon. Oregon goes without saying.
They're always going to have talent. I'm interested to see what Indiana does this year because now you've got to do it again. But my question for you guys is, what percentage chance, 0 to 100%, do you guys think that Bryce Underwood is starting that Ohio State game?
85.
Yeah, I would say 70 to 80. Yeah. I mean,
is that because he's lost the job, or because he's finally taken the job? Like, is it something where, he has it earlier in the season, and then, where are the doubts? I guess why not 100? Is it just because he's a freshman?
I thought that, of course, they had the setup of Mikey Keene coming in from Fresno State, but I hear bad things about his health, and that Bryce Underwood is so far off the charts that maybe he starts game one. Now we see that they're interested in Brendan Sullivan, the former Iowa Northwestern quarterback, to bring him in and have him possibly be the bridge.
Did he play against Ohio State in that night game way back in 2019 or something? I mean, I don't know. Maybe he didn't. I don't know.
He's moved around so much that.
Good God, he's been there forever. Yeah, I don't know what to make of it. I kind of got a mixed reads on how Underwood did. Obviously, I didn't see it, and I guess a tape of it is supposed to be on Big Ten Network this weekend, some edited version of it. I know he threw a flea flicker for a 90-yard touchdown, but, whoop-de-doo. The situation was the same as Ohio State. They didn't do any blitzing, or they just stayed in the base defense for their, quote, spring game. And they made it sound like he just made the throws that were available and, had a decent day, but, nothing to get, too overly excited about. So, consistency is going to be the issue. I mean, it's just hard for a true freshman. I mean, the length of this season is going to be so difficult, and to just continue to bring it day after day, week after week, it's hard for a freshman to do that. So, to me, they'll probably lose a couple games because of him, but, he's so good potentially that maybe he'll win one that they weren't supposed to win just because he makes some, incredible throw or incredible play. So you kind of walk on a tightrope with him this year, and we'll see if he lives up to the hype.
They also statistically have the worst schedule in the Big Ten.
Well, after last season with the parity scheduling and everything, you got to throw him a bone. I mean, God, that was a terrible year. I mean, they get the first place team from the AFC West and the last place team in the AFC West. I mean, it's you gotta balance it out there a little bit. To me, and I did a draft last year of how the TV thing would turn out. I haven't done it this year, but if the Big Ten is not doing anything more than providing 3 quality matchups every week, then they really are screwing over their TV partners and probably won't get quite as much money when they try to go back to the negotiating table the next time. I mean, you've had CBS and NBC sitting there looking at each other like, they gave me this shit for, a prime TV spot. What is this? So I don't know. It's they got to do better with the scheduling, I think.
After letting Fox take whatever they want, and then it's okay. Now here you go. You only get side dishes and sometimes leftovers.
Yeah. I mean, there were some games in prime time and in 3:30 that you're just kind of scratching your head like, holy cow, this is what makes the cut as one of the best games of the week. I don't get it. And what hurts them is Nebraska hasn't been any good at all. I mean, that's a name that you put on the marquee and usually, get some curiosity viewers out of that. But, it's been a train wreck for a quarter of a century. So that hurts. And USC wasn't any good last year. So that hurt as well.
Well, when Michigan goes into Memorial Stadium in Lincoln, Nebraska, week 4 of the season, and the Huskers put it on them, then, Nebraska is back.
They're back. Go Big Red.
Well, they're going to get to be able to throw decent games on TV and get their way when the Big Ten establishes these 4 playoff spots. Then they're not going to care what everybody's records are. They got 4 spots in the playoffs automatically, and then they can start scheduling tougher games for everyone.
Well, and there's consideration about in terms of these playoff spots, bringing in television ratings as well as making that something that they consider. So if that, no, Mark, listen, if that is part of the stated evaluation rather than just the standard, this is the way we're going to do it in the past, then you're going to want to have good games on. You're going to want to put good games on there. And I see you both shaking your head, and I agree. But as I've had pointed out to me in 2014, with Ohio State being the number 4 seed, if TCU or Baylor was instead Notre Dame, is Ohio State getting in over that name?
Probably not. Probably not. Yeah, it definitely helped. The Wisconsin game certainly catapulted them, but the name value of Ohio State also kind of carried a lot of that weight as well.
Well, if there is a television ratings component that is introduced into the college football playoff selection, I think we've moved closer and closer to WWE status.
Well,
Novelty act.
And you already kind of have an effect of that with basketball because, one, the top team play the good mid-majors. So, and then, it's a thing where it perpetuates itself. Ohio State plays 20 Big Ten games, and they're all in the top 100 of the computer rankings. Ohio State's computer ranking is artificially high because of that. And, insert name of Indiana State 2 years ago got riffed, and whatever mid-major this past year didn't make it. But, McNeese State, if they hadn't won their conference championship, probably wasn't going to get in. So it's not right. I think if you, just in terms of basketball, if you win 28 games but don't necessarily win your conference tournament championship, you should be in the NCAA tournament. I mean, give or take. I mean, I have a pretty strong – now if you get back down to like 24 wins, I'd say no. But, you've just demonstrated over week after week after week after week. You've beaten the teams on your schedule. And I think the same is going to hold true, with football. This past year we saw, some non-entities made it, Indiana, SMU, Arizona State. Would anybody in their right mind have thought that any of those teams were playoff teams, let alone all in the same year? That's just nuts. So I kind of prefer it that the best 12 or 14 or whatever make it, as opposed to some artificial thing that takes off the field stuff into account. But I don't know, just fix the seating and Do it right. That's Tony knows that's one of my favorite sayings. Do it right. So,
It's so simple. Just do it right.
do it right.
More people should do that.
Yeah. If we all lived by that, what a wonderful world we'd have. Just do it right.
Well, I'm going to take my latest shot at doing it right and putting together some type of a playoff formula, but I don't think any of this can be done right unless the schedule's addressed, because that's the component that has the biggest impact on the results on the season is the schedule. So until you fix the schedule, then you can mess around with seedings and all sorts of things, and it's not going to be done right.
I think the problem with that is SEC only wants to play 8 conference games, and a lot of their teams, like South Carolina, plays Clemson. Florida plays Florida State. I mean, there are natural rivalries that a lot of these teams play. Georgia plays Georgia Tech. So they have a built-in 9th major conference opponent. A lot of those teams do, or at least a few of them. And then for those 3 in particular to then go on and play, a contracted game, either a one-off or a home and home, now you're up to 10, but 10 puts them on par with the Big Ten. So, I see both sides of it. Honestly, I don't worry too much about it because I think that the quality is kind of borne out, and you'll get the you'll get the best 10, 12 pretty easily, I think. I don't think there was a lot of discussion or dispute the way that it all came down. Alabama name value, Miami name value, they were left out, but they weren't one of the best 10 or 12 teams. So I think that's just the way it went for them.
They didn't have one of the 10 or 12 best records. We don't know if they were one of the 10 or 12 best teams. So you got your faction of people that want the teams that earn it, which means record. And then you got your people over here that want to select by the eye test, I guess, the best teams. I'm going to try to merge those two things.
It's difficult.
It is. It absolutely is. I am by no way advocating leaving out the Indianas of the world because they played a crappy schedule and that they had largely nothing to do with. Of course, it was handed to them by the Big Ten, but they also played 3 high school teams.
Yeah,
11-1, put them in the playoff. They earned it. I'm
caught
okay
them on a
with
year
that.
when they didn't play a major conference. Like they've played Virginia and some other teams outside the conference in the past. It just caught them on a year where they didn't have that, which, for whatever that was worth, to beat a 4-8 or 5-7 Virginia team or whatever they ended up. But, I see all sides of it. It's comparing apples to oranges. And I think that's where you kind of have to look at. I know that Doug Maurice went, and a guy who covered Ohio State for a while now as a podcast. I think he went to one of the mock selection things, and he said it's so much more involved than who you played and what your record is. They look at how good your offense was compared to other contending teams. They look at how good your defense was, and he said they have this whole computer thing spread up there. And he said, as you were looking at this on the thing, it could have been Ohio State, but it could have been another team. There were a lot of green boxes for this team to explain why they're in the position they're in. And it's more than just what you think they're looking at. So I think that the committee takes a little deeper view of each team's resume than just beyond computer ranking, record, those type of things. And, I'm for whatever makes the most sense. It just, it's not the NFL where everybody played 16 other NFL teams or what is it, 17 now. And your record is your record is your record. So,
All right, folks, make it on back next week. We should be here on Wednesday, but that's why you subscribe. Hit the bell for the notification to know when we go live. In the meantime, catch Tony's work at Buckeye Huddle and Buckeye Weekly. Another go at it, Tony. Anything in particular to keep an eye out for?
No, not right now. Although watching the Bo Atkinson situation. So if something happens there, we'll be breaking.
Steve.
Yeah, one of my staff members who will remain nameless called my house at 11:45 last night. Tony knows from WrestleMania this past weekend that I went to sleep both nights at 10 p.m. before the main event. And he and Kevin were both giving me heck for that. But I did get up the next day and catch the aftermath of both main events, and another WrestleMania in the books. But so he called me at 11:40 last night and said, "Is this Atkinson thing? Should we have a story up on this?" I'm like, "I don't know anything about it. He hadn't committed when I went to bed an hour and a half ago, so I go to bed with the chickens, I guess." So NFL draft coverage, that's what we're working on. Got some neat stuff coming with that, and just recapping a lot of what we saw in the spring. I did a really, what I thought was a nice story on Luke Montgomery yesterday, kind of solidifying himself at guard, and working on one on Carson Hensman, solidifying himself for a second time as the starting center. So kind of laugh, he lost his job for inexplicable reasons for that Missouri bowl game. And then they brought in an All-American caliber guy, Remington Award winner guy, and said, "Carson, you just stand over here for a while." And then as one by one, those offensive linemen went down in a heap. "Carson, why don't you get in there?" Didn't he play guard for a game or two and then had to go play center? Yeah. How crazy was his 2024 season and career trajectory? Pretty crazy.
All right, guys. Appreciate you making this happen. As always, we'll be back here next Wednesday, folks.